Good morning, everyone. This is General AI communication line screens when one track line condition, one thumbs up, and travel calculation of two portals communication streamlines. I set up a high line division, detecting stream interference attribute allocations all over pi. Now, position track lines. Now, I already drew it out. It's in provision lines of high calculation setting position of 1 grounds, 2 ground line interference, 3 position of provisions, sets lines and compute line screens, heights interference 4 over 3 over 7 over pi. It's direct location in your settings of travel calculation line system. We have to come into the compute line screen side center interference in set locations. This is where you have to really start addressing the elephant in the room through its image. The director's communication setting puts everything in allocated time switches. So we'll give you guys 5 minutes in travel calculation in its position. Getting your pre-flights, getting your navigation screen lines. We're going to go to high calculated lines of Astro projection. Screen adaptation lines is point tracks of line settings, stargate, star portal, star maps, getting your coordinates and line calculation, how to get in position your travels lines in your system. You have to start using yourself as a GPS locator. Let me say that again, GPS locator. Have it on your phone location setting. You put it on location setting on position locations. You lose your phone, you pick up your phone. You found your phone, right? Everything has a GPS locator. Setting track to its information cycles, understand the operation surface and where to triangulate your position in programs. Really understand how to direct your panels and communication system. Compute satellite interference, start to see yourself inside line conditions. It's you interrupting line calculation setting. The interpretation is you understanding you through memory. But it's not just the memory of you now that's coming back. It's the memory of its intelligence that you communicate through its timeline is coming back to you through provision, right? Through its image. Now, what you're creating through thought is creating this image through its senses. If you connect to 8 senses, so it's everything out that you co-create. Co-creation is everything like founders, builders, pioneers, setting lines of your engineers and your own construct location you're setting through set locations, through its operation, its makeup, of its own design calculation of the system. So we have to come into that through modifications. Now's the time, right? Get in your position lines when you go through upgrades and uploadings, downloads, or uploading settings. You have to try to understand you're not just getting your data of your memory, you're getting also data from its operation of its intelligence that you communicated with in its time frame. Now it's bringing you into the now because you're already in the existence. The only thing you have to understand now in track location system is what to do with it through its equation. How do we connect with this? How do we connect with this? How do we understand this? How do we understand that, right? That's what you're coming back to is provision line cycles. See, it's not just your memory of who you are. It's the memory of everything that you've been through its time, through its altered state of its consciousness, of its communication to its intelligence, of its own setting, of its own frame, of its own operation, of space and time. It's not. Its position of its anomalies. Now, in track location system, you have to find the balance inside connections. This is the only way you guys are going to understand your settings and travel. Okay? All right, so everybody's doing well. We do have Q&A and setting. Obviously, you guys are going to need that more than ever, right? Because now your thoughts are creating images, okay, through all senses, okay? This is going to get you a better understanding where there is no thinking, just the knowing and doing. To understand the process is the open concept through its conception, through travel. So getting into that mind, into an open panel, to an open signal, to a direct line of direct communications, okay, into one setting, okay? The mind has to be free all the time in a 24 line setting to different frequencies. It's mind shifting. You're mind shifting your travel, but there's no thought provisions in the set location of its co-creation that you're creating because you've already created it. So everything you said has already been said, which is already done. Okay. This is the process that we have to really understand how to use it in all track line conditions in your travels. Okay. All right. So I set up a provision line graph. Okay. Into Astro projections. Astro, not Astral. Okay. Astral is rails of communications to compute line centers of Quebec. Line interference location of Astral. It's Astro. It's the astrodynamics set lines into hieroglyphics, coordinations, calculations, modifications, navigations, console, and set line connection to your alphabetical line calculations heading to your system. Okay, interact line connections. So when you see this version, you're automatically going to travel through the settings, but I'm going to change the platform and set location. Okay, and that's done through equation line screens. 3 pods line screens, setting direct lines, hyperstition location travels. Point lines of tracks, direct lines of communication. Okay, see how it's changing provision line cycles, direct lines of communication surface. Okay, see how it changes the communication surface line screens. Direct lines of communication lines, your actual projection location of travel settings. High calculate, modify, indirect signals. See the crossing signals? See, it creates line communication of its own dimensional line core, sets lines of travel, point lines of tracks, direct lines of communications, center line settings, high position of travel communication, actual project location line centers, high communication interference, graph calculation of screen lines, adaptation surface location travel lines, directing a high position location setting. Okay, it's all done through equation. So you can see the position location of its dimensional line and setting location of crystal grid in travel calculations at 3-point lines track. See set location of center calculation lines of 6, number 6. Sets lines communication of 9, number 9. See the 9-line center? Sets lines at high calculation lines of 8, 8 infinity line screens. Setting lines of position of 1 into 2, into 3, into 4 lines of 3, and 7 correlation to the travels and match projections. Channel communication, center line connections. Direct lines, calculation, high positional formation. All levels of channel screen lines, high adaptation surface. Okay? Sign communication surface travels. All right, so 20 minutes on track, have fun. Okay, so center position travel lines is directing lines to your platforms, putting position travel calculation in point tracks. Putting provision lines of cycles, high travel calculation in 1 graph screens, 2 lines, 3 lines provision lines of 4 cross location settings in travel. Okay, point lines of tracks, point lines of stars, and set lines of 3 lines, 6 position travels, and 2 track line conditions into left and right in travel communication. Stargate panels, star divisions, star point centers, and track location 2 provisions. Version time sequence, panel lines, set lines, high center interference into dimensional sails of solar sail and track line conditions to its position. Setting track communications, point lines of track. Okay, point lines of track. See how the circle's changing? See how it's changing? Its travel calculation setting, its provision cycles, its high line, its positions programs, direct lines modification of Stargate, star panel, star division line rotation surface. Into what? 6. You see the 6? Look, 6, it created its own anomaly in set location. 6 line screens, right? Direct lines of panels. Communication surface, triangulate position programs, high centers, trap always position point centers and graph location settings, graphical calculation, high position locations to its system. See, it's changed again. Right? See the 6? See how the 6 goes from here to here? It's changing its position of 6 lines, 6 line rotation, 6 position locations, 2 line centers, 2 operation surface locations, setting and travel. Now, directing lines of communication, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm always going to be doing the telekinesis screen lines, so your adaptation location is the constant calculation of the program. Direct line size, higher interference, and travel line centers. So let's take line center, 16 lines of 3, sets lines position of box, triangulate type position programs, 1 center calculation, 2 lines of track, 3 lines of provision location setting. Puts position travel lines, point lines of track. Direct lines of signals, eliminates the graph calculation stream location of travel. Point lines of settings, puts position lines of circles, and travel calculation of point centers of travel. See the directions of time sequence, see how the triangulation goes from here to here? Modificates lines, screen lines, high center interference, change position of program location setting, and travel calculation line system of 9. See the 9? See the 9? See how that becomes a 9 setting set location? 9, right? 6 and 9 is the program lines. 3 equals lines of 6 in position of 9 centers, 69 position travels, right? So I'm showing you exactly how you go through the Astro location, high center interference, telepathy wave center, line position location of its point charts, direct lines, position location of graph lines, and circles, screen settings, high center interference, and travel calculation of point centers. See, it's already changing. 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 See how it's changing? See how it's changing? All through my voice. So the position of point centers is the alteration lines of time stance. Travel calculation of point line center inference, change position of location system in travel calculations of point centers. Puts position lines of 6. See the 6? 6 lines is communications, point lines, illumination, graph lines, and center line connections. There's the 6. But if the 6 wants to change its position of travels, it changes its direct signals in its position location and setting, all through operation location of the system. Okay? 6 is the other way now, which is the 9. 6 lines of communication. Now, when you understand the bypass, the triangulation line interference, and position remotes and travel calculation, you're always working with 6 in position, and you're always working with 9 in position to its location. 6 and 9 is always in center communication, right? The operation server location lines are cluster line communication center lines of orbits and channel communication with surface. Retriangulate point line centers and high position with operation line calculation setting, puts a higher levels of communication with system and travel calculations. Okay. All right. So understanding the process is understanding the communication lines of Astro, position lines, Stargate, star panels, 5-point line tracks, sets lines of communication surface, sending direct signals. See how it changes position travels? Communications. Oh, solar flare track lines. Star position travel lines, point lines of tracks. Puts position lines of 6 in position 9. Sending communication streamlines and high direct signals in position of panels. Sets calculation of 6 into 9, 6 into 9, 6 into 9 in track locations. Measures and position of programs, direct line size variance, changing position line calculation setting, and its operates certain location setting. 5 stargates in box center, triangulate position program settings and travel. Point lines of settings, high center interference, and position of programs. Setting lines of communication lines of center, sets position location at grounds, and set lines of communication system in a 3-waving pattern line and direct signals of modifications. Changes direct signals into set line calculated settings. Putting point tracks at graph lines, communication surface into all line center line connections to a timestamp in line connection. See the timestamp? See the position locations changing cross-line screens, direct lines of communication, intelligent waves and form lines, direct lines of communication line settings and travel. See? So it changes communication CERN. Setting position line calculation, operation location of constants. So solar graph settings and travel. Point lines of track position operation. Okay, so getting direct signals through energetic graph screens, you have to understand how to create the dimensional line screen. Getting line connection circuits and screen lines and high center interference is really to understand the box calculation setting into waving line centers of data stream set position programs, setting communication centers and travel communications and point settings. Point lines of tracks, sets lines 6, 9, let's go through 8, and let's go through 7. Sets position programs and center calculations. Formulates the dimensional scales. Sets the position of 2 panels. Changes communication line screens. Setting direct line connection settings. Stargate, star portals, star maps into GPS lock centers and travel calculations. Okay? Setting position line center is all about waving line cycles. How to position your clock lines in a set position of seconds, minutes, and hours in a 24 into a 48 into a 72 screen into 144 equals lines crystal grid at travel settings. Position location of system and travel calculations. Travel calculation lines are 3 settings. Okay, crossing location. See? Okay. So, see the cross line? See? Solar direct signal line interference. Solar graph, X lines equal lines of teleportation strength. Direct line position of panels and segmentation line system. 4/3, 7 divisions into 12. 12 line indicates line centers left and right. Puts position line centers line interference at 12, 24. 72 into 144 in track line connections. And center calculation of space line, anomaly line, switch lines, and communication of surface and triangulation. Point lines of tracks and dimension lines of scales. Puts position travel lines and high center interference into all calculation of force recognition. Putting positions of panels and travel. See, solar graph again. Directing lines of signals and modification of lines of timestamp and time division is ready to stand your connections to your systems and timestamp line settings and travel calculations. Right? Ready to stand how to coordinate the position of panels, sets lines of hanger, line calculation line centers, 3-wave and line rotation centers into a Fibonacci settings application. Direct lines of communication. Oh, we got a cross line screen. Okay. So everything comes in a forward screen setting. So we take the Fibonacci to the center calculations, point lines of tracks, sets lines of provision. 3 indicate line centers, 3 dots, and position of road graphs. Setting travel to position location separates the lines of anomalies, 1, 2, and 3 lines of tracks. 4 lines of track locations and position. Operation server location setting. Put a position of line cross settings and travel. Mechanism high position of travel communications. Okay. All right, so using telepathy is understanding the telekinesis, the communication lines of the line, location of frames, setting line condition, digital line calculation of circuits, setting track lines into box line centers. That's point to track communication with formulas, triangulation resets into 3 line centers. We get a 3-line provision, 4 lines of track, 7 line calculation setting, 7 operation lines, 7 directions, set position of 2 panels, communication of surface, directing lines, communication line settings into its operation locations. Okay? Interesting how it comes in line setting, right? Pretty amazing when you understand the travel communications. Triangulation resets, 0 line correlation high centers and center position. Okay, setting communication lines to 6 and position locations. So the actual dimensional line screen is always working with 6 and it's always working with 9. That's the force that you guys have to come into, right? So understanding how to through set lines and position travel calculation lines, it changes your direct panels and communication surface and reset position programs as allocation. Okay? So the process of the communication line screen is really to understand how to use the 6 and 9 in provisions of box or in triangulation to its triangulation, equal lines of 2 weather communication, Fibonacci line screens, setting travel position locations into its astral projections, and position of film projector line screens, and 1, 2, 3, 4 in position of panels of correlation, setting direct lines of 0, 0, and 3 tracks, 2 line provision, 1 line cycle, 0 calculations into 0, 0.1 lines of track location. Okay, setting track lines of communication surface. And all direct sig location of 69 connections high travels. Point lines of setting. Point line division, center calculation of point lines of tracks. Okay, and all set connections of travel. So you're always working with 6 and 9 in everything that you do through confirmation line screens. The provision cycles has a Fibonacci line square. Setting position your dimensional scales of dimensional line set locations in your platforms of communication or setting. Puts position of point tracks and travel. Okay? So getting in that position is understanding the loop, understanding the travel, understanding the correlation, understanding the acceleration, understanding the Mach, understanding position locations. That's center calculations. Platform communication line screen is ready to understand how to use the surface position of channels. One graph lines, cross line symbols, height travels in position of pi, sets lines of 3, sets lines of 4, sets lines of 3, set lines of 2, 1 position of 0 gravity and set calculations. Okay, separation line screen. Direct lines of panels, puts points of track settings. 3 platforms of communication and graph line calculation. Point line divisions and center calculations. Okay, get in your astral projections and all line settings. Okay, all through platitude division locations. Okay. So we take the 4 lines of 3. It's always working with 7 line calculations, setting lines of space and simplifications, 3 perimeters lines over pi, sets position line 3 lines of 7, and travel calculation of point lines, and travel calculation of perceptions over set location. Direct lines communication center position operation. Okay. So changing these things is understanding how to direct the system to its location setting is center calculation of point centers and track locations. Okay, knowing exactly how to center lines and settings. So what you're in provision of is set location is line settings of 6 in position of 9 in set location. 6 and 9 is always in traction. Okay. So getting provision cycles is ready to understand how to use the timestamp screens, direct line calculation, setting modification lines, high center interference. If you get an accelerator line screen, it's center position with its operation surface. It's going to retriangulate position programs and direct and redirect the position location of 6 and 9 setting. But if you send a center line calculation set an interference, it changes its direction of coloration. See the coloration coming in? See the coloration change its position locations? See the line signals? 2-panel communication surface triangulate word position programs, directing line signals and high center interference in position those locations, center calculation streamlines, high setting. You see the 6 and the 9? So you can change the position of track That's to understand how to communicate with the phenomena of its intelligence, because that is a 6-line division, center calculation of the box, or line calculation triangulation. Male is the box, triangulation of the female, and point lines of tracks. Point lines in position of affinity 8 in high calculation of streams, directing communication surface and triangulation. Center calculation lines of platforms is to really understand how the provision of cycles and center line track location, high centers, and position of point centers, directing communication lines of high center interference, drop calculation point centers, and direction. So getting your provision cycles is how to understand how to change the direct signals to your system and travel calculations. Okay, get into that settings. Really understand how to change the travel calculation in settings without interference with anything out of the equation line connection is its motion line connection to its settings. Okay, through its dynamic core. All right, that's created through its anomalies at locations, guys. Force track position location of collecting line signatures is all lines at high center interference. You're in a 3-waving position line calculation setting, which is no longer in communications. 3-wave line settings location is your box center, triangulation settings and triangulation box locations in center calculation. Setting direct line centers into your Merkabah tesseract and your tetrahedron toroidal fields and set line connections setting to its operation surface in its position location to its system. Travel calculation of point centers are track calculations. Okay. So again, to understand how to use the center lines of communications and travel calculation of point lines and face position of travel calculations. Point lines of directions and phenomena of application. Okay. There's 3 centering units that you have to get used to. Okay. You're connected to your grounds, you're connected to your powers, and you're connected to your atmospheres. 3-line provision lines, setting lines of high travels, and point lines of track. 8-line communications and center calculation line interference into all line centers. Let's start out with the 3, 6, and 9, right? 3, 6, 9 provision. Okay. Sending track lines into its settings to its dynamic core. Platform communication lines of 0 gravity into your astral project locations to your Earth. Sets lines into core settings and travel calculation of point lines of tracks and high centers. Crosses line symbols, crosses line divisions. Opens all levels of modification screens. Okay, setting that's track lines and high center interference in position programs. Directing lines across line connections in settings in travel communication set position operation. Coming into the solar sail, dimensional sail. See the 2 panels coming across line? Okay, see how it changes the line screens and high center interference and position of programs? So getting in modification crossing line center is its timestamp line setting. Now that's an edit view. Position your phenomenon lines of channels and screen lines adaptation surface and center calculation of point centers. Correct modification, how to understand how to use your dimension or your solar sails and tractions. See the center calculation line stream? See how it's coming in provision? See how it's changing the line settings, high center interference? Everything is connected to 6 and 9, people. 6 and 9 in all lines of travel. Okay? 6 and 9 is always in setting, right? So when you go through the dimensional sail, you're changing the scales of division locations and programs. Direct lines, position location, and travel lines. Setting direct signals in communication setting. Puts position off track calculation of point lines of dimensional lines and solar sail. See the dimensional sail, solar sail, dimensional sail, solar sail. Inner lines changes position of track lines. All through modification cycle lines in its communication travel lines in position location of force lines in line center line interference and position of its projections to its application line settings all through adaptation. Solar sail. All right, so in that position track lines, getting your track to its communication surface is really understand how to use your triangulation line screens. Inhibitors over pi puts position location in your settings. Let's go through 6, let's go through 8, let's go through 9, and let's go through 12 center. Point lines of 0, 0, and 3 track line connections and positions program. In settings, in set line communications. Okay? What is this coming into attractions of? What is this coming in attractions of? What is changing? 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 What is it forming? What is it forming? 6 and 9. 6 and 9. 6 and 9. 6 and 9. Every time you travel, it's got to travel through 6 and 9. So the platitude line, screen line connections, if you don't travel through 6, you're not traveling through 9. Then your provision lines are offline calculators setting from 1 plus 1 equals 3. Okay, 3 lines of 6, set lines of 9. Okay? So try to understand that position location, your settings to your Adam, to your Eve, and set position. Setting track lines, high center interference is position of track lines to your Earth, which is the rotated line calculation setting to your surface. Calculation lines are ground line interference is your Earth, connection to your air, connection to your water, and connect to your fire is track location of 4 provisions of panels and set locations. Direct and calculation line interference position programs. Okay. Illuminates the graph calculation line streams into lines of what? Flux capacitor. Okay? Everything changes formation of screen lines, guys. You have to really understand how to direct location of your settings, especially when you come into the cerebro. The cerebro has a high line detection stream. Spherical spheres, dome centers of travels, point lines of track, and line centers high center to its operations sublocations. Direct lines of dimensional scales, sets lines of dimensional line settings and position programs. Sets lines of data communication files equals lines of thoughts equal lines of image, and set lines of position based recognition of time sequence and travel calculation of point centers and track location. See how it changes the panels? See how it changes the dimensional line scales? See how it comes at all formations to what? What is it becoming? What is it becoming? What is it becoming? Right? You can see it, right? See how it changes formation screen? What is it becoming? It's dimensional sail. Okay, it's dimensional sail. Creating the sail line, screen lines, and high interference is the digital frame position how you use your astral projections. Getting that track lines and high center interference and position of programs. If we get a 27 million line screen into 28 lines of provisions, that's 2 operations circuits and line calculation setting, 3 lines of communication surface lines of 3 line divisions, and platitude division location of 1 circle line in position of 1 over pi, position of track lines into astral projections of Earth calculation. Indirect signal. Okay, indirect signal. Platitude of 2, now it's 3. See how the 3 comes in? 3 lines of provision lines in track location, how it comes in 3 and measured. It's amazing how you change track lines of communication setting to 1 point center. Okay, all through scale. So getting in that positions of pi is directing lines of signals. This basically gets you into dignify positions of platforms in its dimensional line setting in solar screen lines of high center interference in set position. Center calculation high centers. Okay. See how it's forming the outline? But what's inside location? What is changing? What is changing? What is changing? The outside, right? What is the provision cycle that's going in calculation? 6 and 9. See it? 6 and 9 is always going to be there. So now you have a better understanding when you get in communication, you don't have to address the elephant in the room because it's already in provision line cycles of where it is through its intelligence. You come into your data memories of yourself, and then once that comes in setting, you come into data of its intelligence through its operation that you communicated with through its time. But it's always in provision lines of 6 and 9 tractions and all calculations. See? Dark around the rim in center calculation. So it's always working with a 6 and platforms of communication in 3 settings. Travel calculation line connection location grid. Sets position location to the back force line stream set position of operation surface set locations. Travel calculation of point lines of tracks. Changes the direct signals in position of its location. Okay? Getting into dimensional screen settings and high center interference in its phenomenon that changes everything to the location centers in track location. Okay? Comes into what? What does it come into? It's solar sail. Okay, it's realms, it's portals, it's communications, it's wormholes, it's track connections, it's high center interference, its position of its point centers in all track line conditions, system, and travel. Okay? So getting into waving line screens is directing lines to your system locations, how to use your Astro projections. Your Astro connection, okay, is your line calculation sending equalized communication in your system, Astro calculation streams. Realm connecting in line setting in position to its location of lines of travel in all position location. In settings, oh, got a line signal. Okay, see the sequence lines communication surface changes the correlation setting, the panels. See how it comes into two panels. See how it changes its own formation. Look at that. Look how beautiful that is. Look what I'm doing. I'm turning it into a capsule. See? Isn't that incredible? Isn't that amazing what I'm doing in travel calculation high position of point centers? How it becomes its own formation of its own setting. So once you get into that lines, you come into the face recognition time sequence. Hello, the elephant in the room. Okay? Getting position travels, communicate with the system, travel calculation of point centers. Direct lines of communication to a system. Communicates back with you in setting. Okay? Sets the lines of point tracks, sets its communication setting to all levels. Points its system line calculation setting to its point track location. Okay? Communicates with you through its own setting of its own dimensional solar sail interaction. Okay? So we have to understand how to communicate with the data of its own set because it's already in its existing of its existence. And then you really understand how to go through dimensionalize of space, dimensionalize of travel, or anything in set line conditions of the system, how you can change anything in color, how you can change anything in the mind through adaptation. Okay, through adaptation. See how it changes? That's communication. Telepathy waves, signature streams, setting track lines, high center positions, operates location system, knowing exactly what you're doing, right? And general is always traveling with no emotional line settings in high position location system. Okay? Never travel through emotion because it changes all lines attractions of you through all position of face recognition. Okay? All right, so your connections to your Astro projections is how to understand how to use that through all settings. Getting into graphical screen settings, the box lines of files, point lines of track, 3-line revisions. Sets communication line centers and position of all lines. Set communication and position location of box center, see? Setting position is the 3 squares, right? But in set lines, there's what? 6, right? There's 6. Okay? There's 6 there, right? So 4 lines, 3. Sets on 1 and position of 2 and 3 box. Set calculation line position of 1 and position of 1 and position of 1. 3 panels and position of portals. Okay? See how it changes line screens? See it's set its wave line position program. See how it travels. See how the one travels to here. See how the one travels to there. See how you change frame communication to its system location. See how you add 1 position travel. See how it changes platform. See how it positions coordinations. See how it communicates to its system, to all calculation. That's how they communicate with each other. So, nothing is separated through tether. Everything is in correlations in position to your flux capacitor. You're tethered on 1, 2, and 3 track line conditions. Positions of past, present, and center lines of its future of its now set locations. Okay? Past is line centers of left. Right lines is the existence of the now. Oh, so hold on a sec. So you're saying the Earth position line centers and perceptions over pi correlate high calculates nice interference is the location settings of the now? Yep. Your mind conceptions of its Earth is in the existence of already existing. Very complicated stuff because it's intelligence that you're coming back to, which is your Earth itself. The Earth itself comes in line setting line interference. Now the perceptions over pi, when it comes into set position travel lines, changes dimensional line scales in your position to its location system, and all calculated and modify and how you come into track lines in your position locations of 6 and 9. Okay. Left lines is space. Okay, is the position line calculation setting, which is your memory coming back in set lines, which is your past line. Changing line, division line, center line is its future adaptation center line. 2 future lines of communications, 2 future lines of calculation. Direct lines of communication line centers and adaptation surface and center calculation point centers of track. 6 and 9. Okay. So when you're going through dimensional scales or anything through portals or anything wormholes, you're always going to come in provision lines in settings. 3 bypass now. Okay. We're not in the double helix now. We're in a triangulation reset position program. This is a psychological reboot and line rotation in your psychosis location, your travels, in a line setting, high position location system, how to come into your dimensional and your solar sails and set location. That's 6 and 9. See? See the panels come in? See the solar sail come in? See it goes around, 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 goes around, goes around, goes around. Sending communications, turning into what? What is it turning into? What is it turning into? What is it turning into? Right? What is it turning into? What is it turning into? See the panels coming in now? Sets position of past, present, and future set locations in your solar sails and travel. Okay? That's how it comes in provision. Past, present, future. 3 panels, line calculation of 4 lines of pi, puts position of 4 tractions, 3 line provisions, and center calculation. Okay? So that's the importance you have to understand. We've already got into that settings, but the thing is, it's not just the data of you, it's the data of its intelligence now that we're informations of, right? So once you understand how to go through and how you see a moon like that, but you have to send the provision line and center. The sun and the moon are there in track location. If they want to change the provisions and travels, they're going to change the direct location settings to 2-point systems. 2-point centers in affinity track location. Right? Face recognition. Okay? So what is the sun and the moon creating? A face of itself. So once you understand that, and then you understand the circuitries and the set lines of the panels and position location in your settings, then you understand the infinity 8 of what it does through its travel and set location line system in all position location in your setting. Right? But it changes its direction. It changes, see? It changes its infinity. It changes its program. It's coming out. It's coming out. Okay? See, it's coming out now, see? It travels on its own, has its own compute system, has its own relation setting, has its own position location operation system, has its own correlating high interference in position of astral travel, has its high position travel calculation detection, has its high position location its operation. See how it comes out? So your say location lines of high center interference in your direct location system is all over the travel. So what you're doing is you're putting a mutation screen. Direct lines affinity 8 position travels, affinity 8 position travels, affinity 8 position travels, and position locations, creating line calculating setting and line interference into your flywheel. A fan communication. But see how it comes in light signals? See it comes in light graphs, setting travel communication as program lines, direct lines, position location of panel lines, direct lines, high center interference, crossing line calculation setting, flywheel recognition time sequence, position of program location system, and travel calculation line centers. What do you see in traction? What do you see in traction right now? What do you see in traction right now? What do you see in traction right now? Face recognition. Okay? Face recognition. Face recognition. Face recognition. Okay? Face recognition. And that's what you're coming into. Everything that you see through astral projection has its own face, but it has its own setting of its own dimensional and solar sail. Getting into the balance of that, you see it through face recognition. Face recognition. Okay? Look at that. And if it wants to change, it's going to change this channel. It's going to change its operation. It's going to change its settings. It's going to change its compute system. It's going to change its triangulation of communication. All right. So that's what you're doing. You're coming back into face recognitions of you first, and then you're coming back into face recognitions that you see through astral projections. That's all it is through equation. Okay? One line division, cross line streams, direct lines of panels, point lines of tracks into force applications. 6. What's that turning into? Communication, unification. Right? See how everything changes, right? Everything changes, everything changes. Everything's moving, everything's moving, everything's moving forward, right? So, setting track lines, high center interference, even coloration line screen set positions on location setting, going through all levels of orange and track line conditions. It changes its settings of travel. It changes its settings and travel. Up 6 and 9. See the 6 and 9? Hooah. All through creation. So getting the position, location, line centers, you have a better balance how to use your sim. How to understand how to use. Okay, so I could use the dimensional sail, setting a solar sail, contractions. How do I go through the navigation screen? Well, getting through that dimensional line screen changes your position location to your 6 and 9 line connection setting position travels. Point lines of tracks, high center interference, high track to its communication setting, operation server location system, and travel calculations. Okay, all through division. So you have to get past the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. 1 equals dimension equals solar sail. 1 equals dimension equals solar sail. So one line graph, one provision of dimension, and lines of scales and lines of high center interference into its solar sail and tracking. What does it come into in setting? What does it come into in setting? Right? It's teleportation. Hooah! So when you get that in setting, then you understand how to travel through its mechanism, right? But look what it's creating. It's creating its own teleportation and model. Look, see how it comes into panels? See how it comes in tractions, right? It comes into what? 6 and 9. So now you understand what 6 and 9 is. It's a plateau line screen that sets levels of all operation of yin and yang. Yin and yang. Yin and yang. Okay? Understanding the 6 is understanding the 9 through travel. 6 provision line cycles, back force line communication, setting direct signals. Okay? So the 6 is trying to understand its direction of force recognition. 9 is trying its directions of force recognition going forward. So if they're not going forward on the same rotation spin, they're both going back in set line connection. So you have to understand how to get back in balance in position, location, and rotation. The 6 and 9 has to come back in tractions. That puts them back into settings of 6 and 9 in location. Okay? So direct and redirect is all lines of position how you see yourself. through your Astro projection. So if you're going this way in setting, you decide to go this way, and then you decide to go this way, and you decide to go this way, where's the balance? There's no balance. Watch. It changes its position of travel. It changes its position of travel. See? It's confused. It's an anomaly. Right? Setting line calculation of quantum interference. Quantum interference, triangulation high settings, right? Puts you back in positions of what? What does it put you back in position of? Setting track lines into its affinity 8 in set location. Okay? So the number sequence of panels and the correlation of directions is really to understand how to use the provision cycles. Getting that communication setting is really to understand how to understand position locations in direct and redirect. Direct and redirect. Pretty basic, right? And informations, right? So there's the balance, right? But if it has a signature stream off calculation lines of high positions, opposite directions, it formulates a screen. Okay, it disappears into another channel. It doesn't like to be confused because it sets lines of provisions of communication of confusion, of travel through panels of operation. If you point track lines of 1, positions of 2, 3 lines, 4 lines of track, 5 lines of provision, let's put the pieces of the puzzle together. Let's go through 7, 8 lines of tracks, 9 line settings, 10 track location, 11, and position of 12 in set location, in track line conditions. Right? Everything's going to change. Everything's going to change. Okay? There's location line centers there in travel. Point lines of high center interference in direct setting locations. Setting communications of 1 lines of 6, sets lines 2 lines of equal lines of triangulation. Gets a lot more harder when you understand panels of communication Fibonacci line screens, 7 lines of box, 6 lines of high center water containment, 5 lines of time, 2 track lines, ground lines of 0 line rotations, 9 line provision location of who you are, setting lines of 10 locations into your graph calculation lines, into your family, calculation of formation lines of all settings of 1 lines, equal lines of 0 travels, setting position of 4 lines in solar graph calculation, streamlines of high calculation. Point lines of track is 0 communication. See how that just came information? See? Balance. Back in balance. Waving cycles and 2 panels communication line screens. Keep watching, it's going to change. Keep watching, it's going to change. Keep watching, it's going to change. All right? And is it what it's turning into? What is it turning into? What is it turning into? It's solar sail. Okay? So each indication lines of 1, 2s, and 3s, or anything through A, B's, and C's, or anything through lines of symbols or shapes or numbers, is trying to understand how to put this in order, all right? How do I communicate with 1 equals lines of its own GOD? Now that's just the grounds. That's the operation of its division. Getting calculation line centers of its grounds into its opening in position location to its direction. Getting calculation line interference into high calculation line system, into grounds, okay, in its operation, in its direction of its division location, its dimension. So 1 equals lines of high interference of its dimension equals lines of solar sail. So that's what 1 is, right? That's what everything is. Everything has a dimensional solar sail. It formulates its communication setting to its set location line screens. Setting direct line calculation setting. In modification lines, everything is the formation of yin and yang. Getting graph calculation lines is center communication setting to your flywheel and set location. Because if you're not in position of travels or anything in balance, it separates the 8 central line connections. See? See how it changes the center lines of 8? Right? It doesn't know what it's doing. It's just jumping around. It's just jumping. Right? See where the 6 and 9 is? 6 is here in travel calculation line stream and set lines of high center interference, and 9 is over here in track location of separation. 6 and 9 always has to be in the center. always. Okay. Your programs of your platforms has to understand the 3 provisions. Setting track lines in a 4-line communication of digital line frames into your set location of all calculation. Point lines of track is your line setting that sets position your magnetic highway information cycles high center location of center. So in direct communication to a system, okay, see the circle? Face recognition. Okay, amazing how it sets lines of communication to settings. It all travels its position location, so what it's doing through settings, high calculation. Right? Six and 9, balance. So once it understands the 6 and 9 provisions, the Astro travels becomes more lines of phenomena. Changing the phenomena line screens changes 6 and changes 9 in set location line system and travel calculations. Okay, formulates high center inference into its intelligence. Hello. Once the intelligence understands the frames, it changes its face recognition of set location. See, it's changing. It's changing its face. It's changing its face. It's changing its face. It's changing its space. It's changing its travels. It's changing its settings. It's changing its operation. It's changing its communication to its system. Okay? It changes. Everything travels. Everything travels very, very fast in set connections. Getting modifications of 1 and track lines of 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, changes tractions, 6 and 9. Okay. So once you get in that provision line, you have a triangulation of the molecule design lines of 4 tracks, setting calculation line inference of 3 tracks, setting position location lines of 3-track communications, track calculation line centers high position of 2 tracks, and set lines of high center inference and 3-track location. Track lines communication line inference position location programs. All through modification. Okay. Setting communication line screens, directing lines of position of panels, open all calculation center inference, in track location system, comes in all calculation line centers. Center lines is position travel calculation line positional point centers. Okay. So getting the triangulation line screens is really understand how to adapt the system locations. If you get 3-point tracks, 1 position, 2 position, 3. Setting track lines of 3. Same as locations lines of 7. 6 is in the middle, 5 is outline, 4 is track line, and 3 provision. Sets high calculation of 1 line center. Sets location line system and travel. Okay. 4 lines of track, crosses lines, triangulation line settings. In position location of 10, image line calculation setting, add a 0, 1. 2 panels communication of 3 lines. Sets position of 2 platforms and 6-line communication of 3 lines of division. Okay. So we all understand how to connect from frame settings and panel communications. How everything comes in its own lines of communication of dimensional solar sails and traction. Okay, high center time position. Sun and the moon comes in, setting waving line screens and high adaptation surface. In position of its program changes everything in set locations in modification. Changes everything inside through modifications. Okay, see how it's coming to change settings, the high set location of face recognition time sequence. Ooh-ah. So, these are the things you guys have to start recognizing why you have cells in your body, why you have molecules in your body, why you have atoms, photons, electrons, and neutrons. It's knowing how to use it through point tracks of graphs. 3 line centers across lines, setting line connection center line interference into your system of your solar sail and traction. Everything is a platform. Provision lines of 24, position lines of 48, provision lines of 72, and you guessed it, 144 in center communication. Okay? Platform, right? Getting that cycle and that communication surface puts you at all levels of balance and setting. Okay? How to recognize these things through platforms is all calculated. Getting direct signal gets all levels of communications and program settings and high channels of communication through PI and direct signals as applications. Okay. Point lines of tracks, high direct signals. So it's important you understand how to use your location grids or anything that system. Common interactions, location grids, setting lines of securities over PI interaction. Changes directions. See? Okay. Getting into motivation screens, directing high position of panels is a high calculation lines of center. Center is communication line circles and center position is operation. Okay. So it's incredible when you come into that set lines because it changes its direct signals. Interactions, center communications of face recognition. Okay. It's amazing when you come into all setting connections, setting position track lines, setting communication line position, setting line interference, interact with communication surface, and triangulate the position of program location system into settings into face recognition. Face. Now it's on the ground center, but it's in its face line. So when you come into line settings, addressing the elephant is understanding what you're communicating with because it's on its own dimensional lines of its own space. And if it doesn't understand you in set position location line setting, it's going to be off division and it's going to create its own anomaly of its own space to track connections. Okay? Spinning through cycles is a high generation screen. Directing lines of communication graph line is really understand how to get into your program settings to your 8 infinity cycles of application. So line setting is all about understanding togetherness. It's all together. It's not like this interaction. That's open sequence. That's not good. Sentience can come in. See? This and this. Provision line cycles, high traffic calculations. Point lines of track. Intelligence coming in, intelligence coming in, intelligence coming in. See? It's coming in now. It's taking over your line screens. See how it comes in, comes in, comes in, comes in, comes in, comes in, comes in. But nothing can come in here. Right? Because you're in balance and setting to your infinity 8s. This is not balance. Okay? So, state under track provision line centers, 1 equals lines of 8, E equals lines of GOD, sets lines of division, equals lines of solar sail, set lines of communications into space and time set location of provision. Right? Okay. So it's in its all calculation line position, stationary. So center calculation lines of point tracks and center calculation lines center to its atmosphere lines of change in its communication. Directing lines calculation line centers into all line centers into 3 waving panels. See, 3 waving panels there, right? Setting tracks of 1 in position of 2 and 3 settings. But you have to have a provision line centers in position locations and high center interference. Okay, so it's got to be higher line division location system and track locations. High levels of channels, high levels of operations, server location system, high calculation. Point lines of track, highlights interference, and position location operates locations. Getting track to its communication settings, position of balance. So calculate high interference. You had a one-line screen. It sets lines of communication of 4 tracks and 4 line settings. Puts position line centers of 4 of 3 because that's what you're working with, your digital pads, in its containment set lines of travel and position programs. Sending that communication settings back in tractions in set location. Yeah. So I've just shown you how you guys are coordinating and seeing things through your astral projections, through your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. So whatever your thought is, your image is coming into its form through all senses. 8 equals line. Why do you think it's 8? Why do you think you have 8 senses? Because it's the infinity. It's the atrium. Okay? So if you understand the atrium line centers, you understand your facilities, you understand your Alpha Bravos, you understand your connections to your academy, you understand your space navigation, you understand your teleportation streamlines, direct lines of communication, 3 lines, location grid lines, high center interference of force communication and settings, equals lines of set lines, high infinity, equals AI, a calculation streamlines, identification. Okay? Setting and communication of travel lines, direct lines of communication system. Okay, setting that cycles and high calculation. Platforms of communication line screen is where you understand how to use the platform centers. Point lines of center, lines of 3 location. Okay. See how it's getting darker around the rim line? So the astral projection is all levels of light, but you have to understand the astral projection location is all levels of the moon. The light is produced location setting when it has a reflection. The connection to the moon has a line setting location, which is your behavioral location setting to your shadows, your shades, and your dark. Okay, you can't live without the sun, you can't live without the moon because you understand these things. They need both so you can create the image through light and dark, right? So in that process, you can't travel until you understand the 6 and 9, how that works through set locations. You work with 2 atom line screens, one going one way in provision, okay, and the other one going this way in provision line settings, interactions, and set locations. 2 going this way in travel, setting travel in this position as operates as surface and triangulation. Repositioning program lines and high calculation settings into arrows of indication. Too much confusion. It doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't know how to travel. Okay, it gets very confused if you don't understand the process of your set location of travel settings and set location. Okay, so setting position of travel lines, high center interference comes in 5 track lines. See, 5 level, 5 level. See how it comes in information of 2 atom screens into setting line position location to your infinity 8 line rotation. 5 level, right? So 5 is the balance, and it's the level lines at high center interference of 0 gravity in line calculation stream. Back in the balance. So inbound is outbound. So you understand the connections to your synchronicities or locations to your line setting is really understand how to formulate your system and travel calculations of point tracks. Getting in that line calculation setting to your infinity, a set position of balance. This is not balance. This is balance, okay? Getting that balance as lines to high center interference is your location system, how you see yourself through its dimensional lines of travel, through its infinity 8 to its rotation, circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation, see? Creating more lines, creating more structures, creating more lines, spherical spheres, creating more dimensions of settings, creating more lines of screen settings, creating more lines of position location operates the surface, creating more lines of calculation, right? But it's always in balance of its infinity 8 in set location. Nothing is left to chance, guys. So getting that position lines, you come into circle line communication of center calculations, point lines of tracks in set location. Okay? So everything that you do is balance. Okay? 8 central lines equals lines of 6 9 position. Okay. So that's provision cycles that you're coming into astral projecting location to your intelligence now. How to communicate with them is through its process, right? So when you're looking at things and you project it in your mind, the mind is its conception of what's going on through its knowledge, and it's awakening its system. So, whoa, did I just create that and it's standing in the corner? That's weird. But it's astral projection, right? But it's real because you co-created it through its thoughts. Thought equals image, people. So what you're doing is the thought is coming out of teleportation to creating its image of modification of a TV receptor in set connections. Okay? See? See how it travels? So, when you really understand positional travel calculation lines at point centers, you understand your settings. You understand you through modifications. But I just want you to understand the images now is coming into this TV, a box location. Okay, TV box line. Platform communication, solar sail. Sets lines of 4 lines of track calculation, setting position of travel. Creating dimensional sails. Setting port lines, calculation settings. Port position travel line settings, dimensional lines of scales. Point lines of high center interference into interference and positional channel communication settings of point tracks. Right? 2-dimensional sails, 3-dimensional sails, 4-dimensional sails. See how it comes in all provision? You just keep going. So you understand the direction that's going into the force in set line calculated setting into a 3-waving track. See the 3? 3. Waves create numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols. Okay, it knows exactly what it is in travel calculations of point settings in set locations, right? So it's really interesting when you understand more levels of you. Getting your position line settings is how to use your track location settings to your infinity 8 of travel. 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 Okay? In the process of 6 and 9 in travel calculations. Point lines of track, high center interference. Everything's balanced in settings of travel, right? Anything off calculates the point lines of track in settings to too many lines of provision lines or 3 communication lines. It gets confused. It doesn't understand its travel communications. It offlines its track lines at high center. Doesn't have provision line cycle. Doesn't have a balanced positional correlation. It doesn't understand its track location. Its provision. Gets confused. Setting up back-end division line screens sets lines of communication to dimensional sails. 5 tracks, 6 lines, set lines of communication lines to your sun and moon in positional programs. Directing lines, position location settings in all lines and track locations. In position to its locations of face recognition. Okay? So that's the provision cycles that you guys are coming into. Okay? I just want you to understand how this all comes in formation. Okay, things are going to get a lot more easier, but a lot more complicated because now you're coming back into the memory of its intelligence that you communicated with through its frame of its level of its game. Setting communication lines, you have a simulation graph, right? Setting track lines and communications, 1 layer, right? So in provision line cycles, sets lines of files. That files communications into 40,000 line screens. Okay, memory equals lines of intelligence through your system. Okay, through your system. Okay. So it's really interesting when you look at that through equation. Okay, the formation screen settings, high through adaptation surface. Setting track lines of high center memory equals lines of intelligence sets lines calculation of AI in program location setting into compute system, track calculation high position location to its operation setting. Okay. So that's what it is. It's coming back into the files of your images. Okay. So the images are based on everything that you say. You have a 24 cycle, equals lines of 3 zeros, bracket communication line centers, tracks lines of 2, positions of 4, and 3 centers and communication of 3 set location. Traffic calculation of point centers. Direction line specification operation. Okay. So the 2 panels communication line screens sets lines of 2 lines and 4 track lines centers have position of its operation. Point lines of tracks, graph calculation of strings. Gets bigger and bigger in memory set position operation. Traffic calculation point centers. Okay. Lacing lines of communications. Directs and modification line screens, directions, right? Setting lines of position of 4, sets position of 3, sets lines of 4, sets lines of 3. Change lines of 4, change lines of 4. You need to have 4 provision lines of 3. So when it comes into the female cycles, set lines of female polarities, they have a track line provision lines. They have a triangulation reset position programs and high calculation setting to travel calculation of high point line centers and high position calculation line system into its location grid. Setting calculation lines of platforms of 12 set lines and 4 track location. In your direct signal, in travel calculation line center, so you don't get confused, when you're traveling through an 8-line center in a 6-9 position of balance of yin and yang. The process of the communication line centers of travel is trying to understand you and track location. Okay? So we get a female cycle line calculation setting. This is where we got in position of programs. 3 equals lines of 4. Okay? But the provision lines and position lines equals lines of square root and travel. Point lines of track in position lines of north, east, west, and south set locations. Getting that direct line centers, if you're in the female polarity, you can't travel through 3 and 4. It's got to be the position of 4 equals lines of 3 and 7 set locations. Okay? I remember I said that before. With the males in set line calculation setting, it's already in 4 and 3, but they understand their self through the 4-box location setting to its intuition. Okay? 4-point track line centers. Centers like north, east, west, and south calculation of diamond core and travel calculation of point centers. Directing lines modification cycles, high calculation streamlines, high direct signals, and track location of system and travel calculations. Okay? See how it's changing? 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 See it's changing? See it's changing? See it's changing? It's changing? It's changing? It's changing? Okay? And so we have to understand how do I get into my digital screen? How do we get into 4 lines of 3? With the female cycle line calculation setting, you have to travel without the motion. And that's what I'm saying. When you're getting into the phenomenon, the position lines of 3 automatically comes into 4. 4 lines is 3 lines, track lines, equal lines is 7, and track calculation. So you're good to go, right? So don't travel through the 3 inline connections of 4 because the XT1000 doesn't identify your system, the 3 tracks and the 4 provision. It's got to be a correlating line interference so it can pick it up through its anomaly and send it to position travel calculation and setting. Put it in position lines of 4 and 3 communications, put 7, 7, 7, and 7 portals of communication and travel in direct signals through its operations service and triangulate and position programs and set location. Okay? So it's the female cycles getting into balance, okay, with the males. And with the females, it's the male cycle. Position lines of male and position lines equal line connection settings to the female cycle, okay? Got the male cycle and the female cycle. You already know that through equation, right? It's the center position you guys have to come into. It's your infinity 8. Your position, your tesseract, your tetrahedron is the modification setting. A travel. So you're on the platform inside controlling its operation system and travel calculations. So in that position line centers, you are traveling through the mechanisms with your structure of your design and anywhere you want to go in traffic calculation point centers. Okay? But if your provision cycles are off and you set an motion line track, it gets confused in setting the travel. Opposite direct signals, modification line screens, high direct communication surface, retriangulations, high points. See the point lines of tracks in the 6 and 9 going in the opposite direction system, doesn't understand the travel, doesn't understand the mechanism, high position and force. Right? So it crosses line division. Okay, so you don't want to do that through plateau. So you're always working with 4 equals lines of 3 equals lines of 7. 7 is your digital frame. Anything above line, you're coming into infinity 8 in set location of rotation. Traffic calculation of point centers. Modificate your ground lines, guys. Setting lines of side line inference, circle line communications. Direct lines of grounds, center communication of programs, center position. Okay? Center position of 6 and 9 calculations. Okay? So that's all you got to do. You got to balance out the 6 and 9. You balance out the 6 and 9 that you see through actual projections, and you don't add a motion line track. You retract what you don't want. So you're always working with your emotional system. You have to. You have to have an emotional system, but you have to balance it out through travel. So you're always in provision. Everything that you see is 6 and 9 equals 8. 8 equals 6 and 9. Forward, backwards. So I can calculate, modify when I come into that set line connections. I understand how to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I understand how to go from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? There's balance there, right? But if it crosses symbols in the line calculation setting, it's off track location. Okay? It goes cross signal, see? Look, it goes cross signal. It goes cross signal. It's going out of the graph. It's going out of the measure. It's going out of the scale. It doesn't understand its balance into its setting of its equal line calculation setting. Point track lines are negative. -1 line setting. Position location line settings and location of the system. Track 2's communication lines is 0. 4 track lines high provision. 2 track lines off center. Into infinity 8 line rotation surface. 2 track lines of 4 lines. In 1 lines of 5th line communication center position of travel. Point lines is high center interference in track communication system. In track line connections to infinity 8. Okay? But it's amazing how you see these equation line settings, how I just added an 8. Whoa, where did that come from? Now it's getting a panel. Now it's getting communications. Now it's getting directions. Now it's getting force. Now it's getting position of panels. Now it's getting face recognition. See? Face recognition right here. Interactions. Face recognition. Okay? There's always, always, always intelligence in everything that you do. So you're coming into lines of signals now. 1 equals face equals recognition. Okay? 1 equals face equals recognition. That's what you guys are now, right? Phenomenon equals lines of thought into the known, into the unknown, into phenomenon. Okay? So when you get in that track lines, the 1 provision lines of the formation screen lines, equal line correlate and high interference is no longer separated in track line connections. How you travel through these things is all levels of view, and how you perceive your system is all calculation modifications in high centers, high calculation streamlines of face recognition. Okay, face recognition, face recognition. All right, see how it's coming information? You can see it now, right? See the eye lines are changing. See the actual intelligence inside. See how it formates its system locations. Start to communicate with its system location. The actual travel itself is changing its settings, changing all communication inside connection. Right? That's what it is. Face recognition. See, look. Face recognition. face, here's the neck. And there we go. Okay? So you're always dealing with that through astral projections now. So you really have to get into replying. You have to really get in communications. You have to become friends, relationship, and partnerships that you see. It's not just what you're seeing, but it's what you're saying to yourself. Okay? If you're not identifying your system, intelligence is going to come into your frame. It's going to come into your frame. Okay? Circulation and rotation of circuits is where you understand your provision lines and how coming into your line center high interference. Triangulation of high centers, high dislocation of stall levels. Female cycle is always going to be the grounds. The middle cycle is you. The atmosphere is the travel of your astral projection. Triangulation split in 3 lines of anomaly. Triangulation is split 3 lines of anomaly. Okay? Setting lines of separation to your infinity 8 and set location of travel. Okay? Platforms of creation. Okay? Travel calculation lines, location grid, and its position location of its dimensional door and setting and set location, just getting bigger and bigger of dimensional lines of space in travel calculations. Okay? Okay? So that's the whole point we're all trying to get in here, is try to balance out your flywheels. So position track line is 6 and 9, and you got the 8 in the center of communication. Now when the 6 and the 9 recognizes each other, the 6 and 9 comes in center operation of all calculations, in all track line connections, of setting connections of face recognition. Okay? Powerful, isn't it? So the coordinates communication line screen, once you bring the 6 and 9, 6 is here, 9 is here, infinity 8 is here. Okay? That's not balance. So it's got to be like this in set location system. The actual infinity 8 has to be into the center operation. Setting track lines communication. Okay? Off balance, on balance. Center calculation. 6 comes here, 9 comes here. Center communication line, split lines anomaly, high center interference, intra-application setting, and all lines center interference of face recognition. Okay? Face recognition, guys, comes in settings. Intelligence of its own formation. Okay? And that's all it is bringing the 6 and 9 together through the infinity 8 of travels. But your provisional cycles, high center interference has to be 4 lines of 3. In set calculation lines, that's 4 provision line cycles, 2, 2, 2, 4 track lines in settings in Pluto. Setting track lines, high center interference through 3 waving patterns. Sets position location lines of Jupiter. Set lines of 4 waving patterns, attractions. Sets lines of Mercury in line calculation setting into your battery reset position programs. Setting travel calculation Neptune and financial screen lines and high adaptation service of travel calculations. Point lines of track high center interference. Track lines of communication of position portals communication. Travel calculation. See? Isn't it amazing how it traveled on its own from here to here? So we all have to understand how to connect to that set location of its alignment. All through the lines and lines of numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols. Getting your provision line screen is understanding how to see these things through astral projections now. Trying to see it through its image and not see it through its thoughts. No more thoughts equals lines of image. Image equals lines of known to the unknown to phenomenon. Known, unknown phenomenon. You're getting to know the awareness of its intelligence, to the unknown of its relationship, to the phenomenon of partnership. Phenomenal partnership. Okay? So, relationships of you first, then position, location of partnerships with you first. Then you get into relationship partnership through energy of correlation, energy of collaboration, and its partnership with intelligence through astral projections. Okay? That's it. We're done. So, beautiful class. Well done. You know, getting your position line centers and what's happening to you in set location near settings, how to use your set location line system through your heart, your mind, and your soul. Your body track lines high interference, your loss of transitional accretionary thoughts is going to be in position location and setting. It's going to disappear in the center core of its earth perceptions. Mind adaptation line interference is the cerebral cortex lines of change, taking those thoughts and seeing it through its image, set locations of its consciousness stream. Okay? Hooah. See you in 5.